Figures released by the state government predict that Western Australia will face a shortfall of 76,000 skilled workers by 2015. As a result, the Barnett government intends to send a delegation of high-powered business leaders to the eastern states in an attempt to recruit workers to WA. But will this strategy be effective? Union officials claim this is nothing more than an expensive stunt, and what is really needed is a commitment to training and apprenticeships. Ian McDougall from Hospitality Group Training believes that any attempt to attract workers to Western Australia is a positive step, but that Colin Barnett's plans will do little to alleviate the skills shortage currently experienced in the hospitality industry.
Oh look, the skills shortage in hospitality have been around since the early 80s, but it's been much worse in the last 5 years, basically since the mining industry has really taken off, the first era of the boom, where there's competition now for employment and there are options for employment. So people are now choosing different occupations, and they're choosing occupations that provide more cream, basically that pay better.
Even though these shortages are across the board, the industry's main concern is how to attract more chefs.
In about 3 years' time, Western Australia will need an additional 2,500 chefs and cooks in the whole of Western Australia. Based on the current training system just of chefs and cooks, Western Australia will produce only around about 120 to 130 qualified chefs in 3 years' time. That's less than 10% of the required demand that's going to be available in Western Australia. Potential repercussions if we don't find enough chefs in Western Australia is the logic would tell you that it's going to compromise the ability of kitchens to be able to produce quality food, which means that potentially restaurants will go broke. They'll certainly go bankrupt. They'll adjust their hours. They'll stop doing low return areas such as lunches. They'll probably close down completely on Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays where they have very low return and very few customers.
There are doubts over how effective Colin Barnett's plans to attract workers from over east will be.
Well, the state government plan to go over east is in itself a good plan across all industries. It's probably not going to help hospitality, unfortunately. The ones, if you're going to be able to attract them to the west, are going to be chasing the biggest dollars. That's the only way that you're going to get them here.
The Australian Manufacturing Workers Union argue that more and more workers in the manufacturing industry are losing their jobs because the Barnett government will not stand up to the multinationals who continue to send their work offshore.
Because the government aren't prepared to stand up and take on these multinational companies, the people that are really paying the price are the second tier and third tier manufacturers. And a lot of those third tier and second tier manufacturers are either running at 30% capacity or winding down completely. We've lost over 600 apprentices in the last 4 years, not being able to finish their apprenticeships. The reality of it is those kids are lost forever. Those kids will find another job and they won't come back to the industry. And that's another serious blow for the skills development in Western Australia. I think you can have 150,000 training positions, but if you haven't got apprentices for them to go to, it becomes a nonsense. And what the government should be doing is, while they're talking about opening up positions in TAFE for people to do training, they should be equally working out how they can get those people jobs at the end of that training. The pre-apprenticeship course is nothing without an apprenticeship, and they need to get that work when they come out of that course. At the end of the day, we're going to end up with a lot of young people trained to a certain level without the ability of ever taking that apprenticeship on.
Following from this, Unions WA question why the resource boom is not resulting in more manufacturing jobs for WA workers.
What we're seeing is that resources boom is not necessarily translating into jobs in the manufacturing and heavy industries that are along our Kwinana strip. We would expect to say that in this environment there are more young people getting training opportunities. But what we find instead is that some of those industries that you'd expect to be doing very well are in fact training fewer people now than what they were in 2008 when the Barnett government was elected. So 1,100 fewer trainees being trained this year than what there were just 4 years ago.
They argue that the Barnett government's plans to recruit workers from over east is nothing more than an expensive stunt.
We think really that that's just a stunt. I think people who live on the eastern seaboard already know that there are lots of jobs in Western Australia for people who have the skills and have the experience. And I think people who live on the eastern seaboard also know that WA is a great place to live. I don't think we need a high-powered government and business delegation going over there touting the benefits to encourage people to come. I think what's really needed is for there to be some genuine investment in training rather than simply perhaps going and standing on street corners touting how great it is to live in WA, because I think most people already know that.
I'm Miles Riley reporting for Undercurrent.